Why game sucks.txt. No, that's not it. Right, anyway, I'm just gonna fucking wing it. I guess we start off with the spells. We'll talk about all the spells that are in the game. Then we'll go to talents. And then we'll just go to overall thoughts. You know what, I thought I could do this while leveling, but I can't. The fuck is going on here? Alright. Right, so we've got a couple of PvP talents here. They're usable around the world now due to war mode. We'll talk about that later. We have Desperate Prayer back. Not actually a lot of changes for this, but we have Desperate Prayer back. We have Powered Fortitude back. And we have Holy Nova back, which is essentially a tool for clearing old content, because it is so insanely bad you're never going to use the global at max level. Just ever. It's never happening. I have to move this so you can see my max HP. So I've got about 62k health at the moment. At 120 in PvP, you're going to have about 140k with gear. Bearing in mind, keeping that in mind, brain is fucking frazzled. Yeah, this healing is doing nothing, so Holy Nova, garbage. Don't know why they brought it back. Well, I do, but I wish they brought something better back. Desperate Prayer is okay. Where is it here? 1.5 min cooldown, 25% max HP. No idea if that's affected by MS or not, actually. I guess it probably is, because it says instantly heals you for that amount, so that part will be affected by MS, but the max health won't, so you'll get half of whatever it is when you use that shit. It's off global, which is cool. One of the only things that is off global. Desperate Prayer is kind of worse than the Fade trade. I mean, I guess that's the trade that they've given us, right? We lost a 10% damage reduction from Fade, and we gained Desperate Prayer instead. Slash, they kind of changed Shield. We'll talk about that in a sec. It's okay, but it's like, it's not like, it's good, but it's like not, it doesn't make up for what they did to Shield and what they've done with global cooldowns and the traits that we lost. But it's better than nothing, so I guess can't complain. What's the Holy Pala personal? Anyway, so what they've done to Shield, they've removed Plea, and they've added Shield. Rather, they've made Plea, Shield into Plea. So Shield now is not got a cooldown, and absorbs fuck all, basically. And I can see why they've done it, for like in terms of, you know, PvE setting. It's like a lot cooler to shield a bunch of people when damage is coming, absorb some of the damage, you know, and then you've got your atonements up, and then you go from there as disc, right? Which is, it's a better change for PvE, right? It's better for PvE now than it was before. But for PvP, you no longer have your Plea, and you no longer have powered shield, essentially, because it absorbs so little. By the time the global is up, the shield is off. So in PvP, disc feels even more now about doing damage to heal. And having played a bunch of 120 stuff, the damage seems really high. Whether that stays remains to be seen. I hope it does, because if it doesn't, disc is in a really bad spot. Mainly due to the shield thing. What I would like to see is some sort of talent, or PvP talent, that reverts shield to the way it used to be. And then reverts Rapture to the way it used to be, because Rapture now, instead of making shield have no cooldown like it used to, since it already has no cooldown, it just makes it 3 times as strong. So Rapture is essentially used in the same way as it used to be, and it's a strong cooldown. The issue being, Rapture is on the global cooldown. Which is really, 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 really bad. Whoever thought of this is not a priest player. Not a disciplined priest player anyway. It's the most clunky thing I've ever seen in my entire life in terms of defensive cooldown or just gameplay in general. This gameplay feels so clunky now just because of this change. On top of that, you have Archangel and Dark Archangel also on the global cooldown, because Blizzard is embracing this new ideology that all fucking cooldowns need to be on the global, which is, like, to a degree I understand, and offensively there's a lot of stuff that I agree with that should be on the global, but there are other things that just don't make sense at all. When you look at Archangel, right? Archangel increases your healing and absorption effects by 30% for 15 seconds. So the first 3 casts after you use Archangel, which is on global, the first 3 casts you do, you're actually going to be in a healing deficit. Until you cast that 4th spell after having Archangel up, you're not going to have any benefit from this already. That's absolutely insane. Like, what on earth can they possibly, like... It just blows my mind, right? Because the first spell, 30% stronger. Second spell, 30% stronger. Third spell, 30% stronger. But you're still only, like, at 90% extra strength, right? So you could have done... Say you're mend spamming, which is most of the time at this point what you're going to be doing with Archangel. It's going to be penance, mend. If you're going to be using Archangel in PvP. So say you do 4 mends, or say you do 3 mends after Archangel, you're still only at like 3.9 or whatever mends. Whereas if you just did a mend instead of the first Archangel, you'd be at 4 mends. So yeah, really don't understand this one. Being on global. Rapture, in my opinion, being on global is worse. It's actually worse. Like, it's harder to quantify, like Archangel, because it's actually a value. It's easier to quantify just how bad it is. Rapture, on the other hand, is like, you're making the shields bigger, but it's like, because of the way it works, it's like, and the way you use Rapture, it's harder to kind of convey how bad it feels. But basically, you'll come out of a CC. This is the best example I can give you. You'll come out of a CC, which there's still plenty of, by the way. They've reduced some stuns duration. They haven't really removed many, and they've reduced, rather increased cooldown on a couple of instant CCs and stuff like Monk Paralyze. But there's still there's still plenty of CC in the game. You look at RMP, the CC is basically the same. So you come out of a CC and your teammate is on 20%, which is a realistic situation. It happens. And then your job as a healer is like, okay, yo, my boy's low, I gotta top him up again, right? And you're supposed to be able to top them back up. Like, you're not gonna do this by then attacking enemies and doing damage, right? Your options as a disc priest right now is Rapture. There are no other options. You have no other cooldowns to deal with this. Pain suppression at 20%, too late. Like, it's not happening. So your option right now is Rapture, and I guess Luminous Barrier, which is fairly pitiful as well. Bear in mind these aren't 120 numbers. At 120 it absorbed about 18k with decent gear. But it's, you can look at it as basically a double power word shield. It's twice the strength of a power word shield. So you have this cooldown, which is an AoE cooldown, by the way, but this is probably our... Actually, I'd say this is probably our best single target defensive cooldown right now, because it doesn't require a global ahead of using it. Which is pathetic, thinking about it. Because 18k is nothing. It's 10% max, well, a little over 10% of someone's HP. So you look at Rapture and you come out of this CC and your boy's on 20%, and you're like, okay, great, I'm gonna Rapture and then start power word shield spamming you, which is basically what you do now. Only now, Rapture doesn't have a global. In BFA, you do it, and your boy dies on the global after you popped Rapture. You're literally coin flipping a lot of the time when you use Rapture, whether or not your guy is going to die on the global, and it feels so bad to play. It feels so awful to play. And same thing when you're getting trained. Like, you can pop Rapture when you're getting trained, and you can just lose 40% health in that global, or someone stuns you in that global, and you get basically no value out of your Rapture, which, by the way, is actually a shorter duration now than it is in Legion, which makes even less sense because you get less value from it as well because of the global. So you get about a fucking 8 seconds of Rapture, 8 and a bit seconds of Rapture. So yeah, feels really bad. Just hoping that Blizzard revert the global cooldown changes on abilities that modify your spells in some way, because it feels almost not worth it to use them. Like, sometimes you'll come out of a CC and it's like, if I use Rapture, like, there's a good chance he's gonna die. I guess I'll just have to power word shield him because I have no other options. Like, legitimately, your only options are Luminous Barrier if you're running it, fucking Ultimate Radiance if you're running it, another AoE healing spell, because your single target capabilities are so bad. So yeah, cooldowns that modify spells in some way need to be off global. Some abilities that aren't modifying spells, you know, defensives that you getting an immediate benefit from, sack, Palisac, that is, like Shaman, some of the Shaman cooldowns, you know, Spirit Link, all that shit, are fine on global because, you know, they gain that immediate benefit. They're not rolling a dice when they use it because, you know, the next global that they need to use to actually get benefit from the cooldown, they're going to be dead. So I get it with some stuff, other stuff doesn't make so much sense. But yeah, they need to just have a quick look at that because it's makes Disc very clunky to play, both in PvP and PvE. But yeah, that's probably the worst part of Disc right now. The damage is really good. In PvP, the damage feels really good. And it feels fun to do damage again, because you can actually see some effect of it again, which is nice. But you really do, you have to either avoid CC like a god, or just stay ahead of your healing, and yeah. Because if you fall behind, you're in deep fucking shit, just because of this global. But yeah, that's the main, I guess, main changes with the spells for Disc. Yeah, Disc definitely lacks some depth at the moment. They should add some more utility to it. I like, I guess, the damage element of it at the moment, but the lack of utility kind of makes the class feel a little stale. But yeah, they're nearly there. I think there's just a few things they need to work on. Master Spell change. Oh yeah, Master Spell is a 45-second cooldown now. Cost an arm and a leg anyway. Not a huge change. What other changes are there? Let's look at talents quickly. Schism, 24-second cooldown now, but it gives you increasing damage that you deal to the target by 40% for 9 seconds instead of 6. I guess for leveling and just general play, PvP, stuff like that, Castigation is going to be the one to go for. This tier is basically the same. No changes there. They slightly nerfed Shield Discipline. Absorb mana, obviously, because Shield is absorbed a lot more easily now and it's spammable. I think this is still a buff. Mostly for PvE, but yeah. Could be worth looking at in PvP now, I guess. But yeah, I really like Mindbender and Solace anyway, so we'll see. Unfortunately, this is still a talent. Unsure why. I guess because Blizzard ran out of ideas. Again, unfortunately, this is still a talent. Just basically don't have a talent there for PvP. Doesn't exist. And then Shining Force is still here, which is great. I really wish they would take this off so that you could use Shining Force more, because I think it's a really fun and interesting talent. But you just get cock blocked 90% of the time by having to take the 30-sec powered, 30-sec Psychic Scream cooldown. So, Blizzard, Then they've added Sins of the Many. This was a trait before, and they've kind of reversed how it works and put it as a talent, which I quite like. I like what they've done here. It's a cool talent design. One of the cooler passives that they've done. I'm not a big fan of passives in general, but this one's cool. So basically, the more atonements you've got up, the less damage you do. I think it's like 1% per atonement, some shit like that. Then they got Contrition. This is new. This is like a Mythic Plus talent to deal with certain affixes or some shit, apparently. Again, not terrible. You can probably find some use for this in PvP. With certain Azurite traits or talents or whatever you want to call it, if they're enabled in PvP. Because there's a thing called Wheel and Woe, which I'll go into later, but it revolves around defensive penance and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of cool talent. Not against that one. Unfortunately, they brought Shadow Covenant back. What a disgrace of a talent is all I'm going to say. Okay, next we've got Purge the Wicked still here. And no other spells, weirdly, on this tier for some reason. Blizzard decided to leave the other two blank. I don't know what's up with that. And then my personal favourite, the worst talent I've ever seen in any game I've ever played, ever. Solid game design, Blizzard. Well done. You're being paid for this shit. Seriously, get your act together. It's pathetic. Then they've got Luminous Barrier, which is new. And this replaces Powered Barrier when you take it. And it basically shields everyone, all your allies in a 40-yard radius. Goes through walls, I might note, in Arena, which is cool. Kind of like this. Helps deal with AoE pressure. It's not a huge shield, but it's better than nothing. It's better than power word shielding, whatever. So yeah, this is cool. It might need a little bit of a buff because it's the numbers on it seem a little low, but we'll see. It's about 18 to 20k at max level with gear. And then Evangelism, which fucking hilariously is also on global cooldown. So yeah, you're never going to be taking that in PvP, so who the fuck cares? Yeah, Lenience. Like, this is the laziest talent design I have ever seen. Like, you get to level 100, you're hyped to take your new talent, and you see this fucking abomination of a tier. Like, Christ. Anyway, the PvP talents. It's kind of reworked the way they do it now. You can choose between your 3 trinket options. Honestly, I kind of think they should just keep Gladiator's Medallion and get rid of the other 2 because they're kind of passive and stupid, but whatever. And then there's a few things removed, but most remains of your PvP talents. Actually, maybe about half remains. Mostly like the main things that you would usually go. So you can take both Archangels at the moment. Unfortunately, they're both on global, so they're not that strong. Yeah, this is really sad that this exists. This should be just a passive, I think, because it's actually good in PvE, unfortunately. So. Right, so you got Ultimate Radiance, you got Strength of Soul, which has changed slightly. Doesn't heal anymore when you shield, which is a bit sad because you could really use that in PvP. It would be very helpful. 15% Fizz damage. Trinity, same thing. You got the 2 Dispel talents. Death, still a talent, unfortunately. Should be baseline. It feels really bad to have to take Death as a talent. Dome of Light, which actually buffs Luminous Barrier. Absorb amount by a fair bit. And reduces the cooldown, but feels not that worth. Like, to have to take a talent and a PvP talent to get an AoE, and it becomes about 30k. Just under 30. No, you know what, about 30k. An AoE 30k absorb on a 2-minute cooldown. When you have 140k health, and you have to take 2 talents for that, it doesn't feel that great. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth, so. You can Dispel Luminous Barrier too. Just icing on the cake, isn't it? So yeah, that's the talents. Again, leaves a lot to be desired. If you're a disc going to next expansion, it feels bad, man. Body and soul as well. Yeah, that's another good point. It can only occur once every 6 seconds now, right? But because powered shield is spammable, right? But the annoying thing is, like, there's no real way of knowing easily when it's back up, right? You can look at your numbers up here if you're shielding yourself, but what if you shielded someone else 5 seconds ago? Are you supposed to then track that shield on someone else that might have been absorbed and know the exact 6 seconds? Like, without add-ons, it feels kind of bad to know when your body and soul is up again. So it would be nice to have some sort of indicator for that. Or just fucking not butcher our powered shield would be really nice as well. Yeah, you could just have a debuff. So I don't know, maybe feather is good now. The problem with is, like, you're already so pushed for globals that using globals to feather at the moment feels kind of bad. Like, you want to be doing damage as much as possible. Yeah, or just make body and soul an active that you can use. That would be nice. 10-second cooldown on it, and it's like an active that makes your next powered shield give 50% move speed or some shit. That'd be so nice. So yeah, that's most stuff. I don't know if I've forgotten anything. Show a skirmish. I'm not on tournament realm at the moment. Yeah, they just keep pruning and pruning from priest, and it feels really bad. And I think if damage stays the same, this could be viable, but it's going to feel very clunky to play if it stays the way it is. Ah, yes, Azerite traits. Let's log on the other realm and talk about Azerite traits. Yeah, I've been through all the spells. There was not much to go through. I'm just going to log on. Will I put this video up when I'm done streaming? Yeah, man. I'll chuck it on YouTube. It's going to be very informal and just... yeah, I'm not going to make any edits. So it'll just be this last 30-minute segment of me talking, basically. Is mending on par with other healers' filler heals, or is it far weaker? I think it's okay. Its one redeeming quality is that it's on the Shadow School, to be honest. Right, so I made a... fuck, what's it called? Lightforged. I made a Lightforged priest because I wanted to test out this Light's Judgment ability, which seems to do a lot of damage. It's a 2.5 minute cooldown. Because I wanted to try it with this voodoo doll trinket that's in the game as well. This one procs after 5 sec. Light's Judgment procs after 3 sec. So you just pop one after the other and try and make them land at the same time, and you do like a nice almost 40k damage. 35k damage. So that could be fun. That could be nice for RMP. You have a mage running Lightforge, a priest running Lightforge, for some nice burst. Void Elf could be good too. It requires some testing. Anyway, I also ran this trinket, which is basically an unused 1.3k haste, and when you use it, it will take your global down, if I've got it bound, to 1.1 seconds, almost 1 second. And bear in mind, I'm in full haste gear. And this is the best solution I could find to the rapture issue. Somebody in chat actually suggested using this trinket, so running full haste with it is the best solution I could find. And what it means is you'll have a 1.1 second odd global after your rapture, which is, it still feels awful, but it's less awful than like 1.4 sec or whatever it is if you don't run haste. So for that reason, I'm thinking haste right now is a pretty solid bet, because most of your healing feels like it's done through atonement. You don't want to be spamming mend. Mastery is probably a no-go. Your mastery is now, actually I forgot to mention this earlier, your mastery has now become grace from the talent tree, which is a real shame, because at the start of beta it was like shield power, penance damage, and atonement healing or something, and it looked really good. I was like fucking hyped about this mastery. I was like, yeah man, this mastery's covered and everything. Mastery's actually being good. You go haste mastery, mastery haste, and mastery's actually going to do something. It's going to feel like you're doing sick damage with penance, and you're going to do mad atonement healing, and powered shield's not going to be completely terrible, and it was so hype. And then you change it to this, and now it's just like same old boring mastery, like CBA fucking taking that shit. It's like, why take a stat that's going to modify powered shield, mend, and penance if you use it defensively, when you can take something that's going to affect all of your globals on all of your spells, which is haste, crit, which is going to affect all of your spells, because all of your spells could crit. Versa, again, increases all of your spells. Versus Mastery, which affects like 3 spells. It's like... So they managed to actually nerf Mastery, which is mind-blowing. They just... I feel like they're just doing random things at all times. I honestly don't get it. So yeah, I have been going Haste. I feel like Haste is definitely T1. Second stat, I'm still unsure on. This is for PvP. Again, we'll try it once things go live, but I feel like haste is very good. Possibly versatility second, or crit, or could be mastery second, because it depends how much you're actually going to have to mend. I haven't done enough PvP testing yet to see how much you actually need to mend. At the moment, I think I'm haste versa. Yeah, I'm haste versa right now. So it's like 10% roughly damage increase, damage and healing increase, 5% damage reduction, which is basically nothing. So yeah, in the state disc is right now, it will probably be viable due to the damage being quite high. But yeah, probably mostly only in RMP and comps with a lot of pressure. 5% damage reduction in PvP is pretty minor. It's not really going to save you using a cooldown or not. Is it fun? The disc gameplay right now is very clunky. It would be fun if it wasn't for the global cooldown on Rapture and Archangel, because the damage is high and it feels really fun to actually do damage as a disc. So let's hope they change that. Fingers crossed. After they fix that, then they need to start looking at the utility of the class a little bit more, because at the moment I think class design, not just of disc but of all classes, is at an all-time low from Blizzard. And I think that's why people are quitting the game so much, because the class design is so... They've simplified it, or oversimplified it so much, that every class feels boring to play. So even though the content that they're producing is really good, people get bored and washed up. Not washed up, like burnt out or whatever, due to the classes themselves being boring to play. But yeah, I guess it's something for them to work on. I actually logged on here to look at the Azerite talents. I actually made a Google Doc, which I will probably link under the video, of all the different traits. They're probably subject to change in terms of values and tweaks and stuff, because some of them are a lot better than others. My overall thoughts on them being usable in PvP, it feels fun on here because you have access to everything, but on live, some of the items that can drop are like from world bosses and shit. And because of some things being undertuned right now, some of the items are really bad, and some of the items are really good. So like, for example, which one is my favorite? like these two have, I think this is the best thing at the moment. This actually increases, one of these increases a penance damage with castigation by 1k. This is post having 3 of them. So usually they'd be about 13.8k damage per penance. This ups it to 16.8k. That's like, what, a quarter more damage roughly? 25% more damage on your penance. Like, that's like another tick, over another tick. That's pretty good. So yeah, I tested most of them. There's a fair few on there, and again, you'll see when you look at the doc or whatever, it's going to be like an Excel thing, and it will show you all of the different spells. Basically, the way it works, right, is you get a zone trait here. So this one's from PvP, so there's a PvP one, Horde. Here you have one from Uldir. Here you have one from Drusvar. So it's a zone-related one here, which will be the same for all classes or whatever. Not specifically on this item, but that will be accessible by all classes. And then you have a spec-specific one here, here, and here. So you have Disc, Shadow, Holy, and you have one of each. And these ones usually modify the abilities. So I can show you some other ones really quickly.
Talk to me.
So this one's Wheel and Woe. This is what I was talking about earlier. When you defensively penance, your next smite is increased by 883 damage, and when you damage your penance, your next shield is increased by 1.5. And you can stack these up. So you can get 3 of these Wheel and Woes, and it will do 3 times as much, which is kind of good. Right? Powered shield here is absorbing 11k. Feel like this is more than the last time I was on. Possibly slightly buffed powered shield, without saying anything. That's stealth buff from Blizzard. Not entirely certain. Just eyeballing. But yeah, so you can stack these up. And then these inner ones are all accessible to everyone again. These are just generic ones that are just spread out randomly on the items. Again, some of them are really good, some of them are kind of bad. This one's kind of bad. Bear in mind you have 140k health. This is not very much at all. It's still the same as before? Okay. Feels bad, man. Yeah, and then some of them are quite good. The one I'm using at the moment, where is it? Was it that one? I'll just go on the item. So, you can get Sanctum, which is 3.6k magic damage absorb off global. And I have 2 of these, so it's 7k off global magic absorb, which is more than the other shield. It's not physical, but most classes have a magic component. And then you have stuff like this, which is just like a proc. So yeah, as I said, they'll be in the document, and I'm trying to rank them all, whether I think they're like S tier, A tier, B tier, whatever. There were some items like, where is it? I want to show you one. This one, okay, so this one drops a banner, and that applies to 4 nearby allies, so it doesn't just apply to yourself. So as a healer, that can be quite good. You can buff your team's stats and stuff by dropping these banners. Yeah, then there's personal procs, there's damage procs, there's all kinds of stuff. So it's worth a look, getting yourself familiar with all the different stuff that's available. And yeah, what I'll try and do is take a look towards the end of BFA beta and see if they've actually tweaked any of the numbers, which would be really interesting, because I've written down what they were. And some of them just looked really lackluster, and some of them looked really good. Since there is no resi or PvP power on PvP gear, won't raiders have the upper hand on gear when they play PvP? I'm still unsure if these Azerite traits are going to be, okay, nice, going to work in Arena. We'll see. They work on BFA if you re-equip, so on beta, sorry. So yeah, hard to say at the moment. But yeah, definitely, like, the more different items that you have, the more kind of combinations of stuff that you can run, and some stuff is going to be better for PvP for sure. Yeah, trinkets work as well. The stats on gear matters. It's not templates anymore. So yeah. One thing I will say, there is on some of the PvP items, there's procs that proc more in PvP. So the procs on the PvP items are stronger in PvP than the procs on the PvE items, which I think is a good way to go about doing it. But they need to be careful not to make it World of Trinket Craft again. Or World of Proc Craft. Most of the trinkets drop from Mythic Plus instead of raids, and raid sets don't exist, so you can do Mythic Plus as a PvPer and get same lead as a PvEer. Are you talking the Azerite stuff as well? How does damage overall feel? Higher than in Legion, I think, just random passive damage. But it's still very... I feel like it's still quite cooldown based. Defensively and offensively. What if you just want a PvP though? I mean, you can still get your gear from PvP, and you won't have a huge disadvantage, I don't think, from PvE. I think that's most of what I wanted to say. TSX with the 14 viewer host. Cheers, buddy. How you boys doing? Is the shield good or bad? Shield feels really bad to use right now. What happens is you'll come out of CC and someone will be on 20%, and you can't rapture because it's on global, and if you use your global, they die because you can't get the shield off in time. So you end up spamming regular powered shields, and so you'll use shield, and if you're lucky, there'll be like a tiny amount of it left at the end of the global. Most of the time there won't be. They'll just go straight through it. So the next global you'll be in an even worse situation than you were the last global. So yeah, shield needs some sort of talent modifying it. It needs to be mutually exclusive with Trinity though. That's the problem. You don't miss Danska season 8 PvE gear, 0.5 sec polymorph, mate. I got them reactions, right? I can deal with them. I think CCing people right after they pop a CD so they don't get the value from it because of the global is going to be a big thing. I don't think Schism is worth it at all now in PvP. I think if anything it's even worse in PvP now than it was before because it's a 24-second cooldown. So you can just use it, and then stuff happens in the game, and you're like, okay, well I can't get the value out of my Schism now. I have to do other things. I mean, I'm gonna do some PvE. Don't sat me, mate, because I want to get the ideal items for PvP. Schism deals 2 times smite damage. It's something like that. It's like 180% of a smite or something. They buffed the damage on it, and they increased the debuff to 9 seconds, but it still feels really bad to use. Even leveling, I'm going to go Castigation because you can run War Mode, which gives you 10% EXP bonus, and you can use your PvP abilities, so you can use like Archangel, Dark Archangel, all that shit. So you run Searing Light, Dark, and I can't remember what third. Third doesn't really matter. And your Searing Light basically resets your penance every 3 smites. So you run Castigation to get maximum value out of the talent, and then you run all the penance Azerite traits that you can get to buff the damage. I will say the Searing Light, not Searing Light, what's it called? Purge the Wicked damage is really high. Higher than in Legion. Hoping most good items will be available through Mythic Plus. I think the best way they could do it is make all the Azurite items available through Mythic Plus, and just regular gear be like raiding, right? And then that way PvPers can have access to it too. There's a lot of random world boss drops by the look of it as well, so. Are there any ridiculously imbalanced trinkets? Most of them are like pretty... What's the word? They're pretty cookie cutter, like proc trinkets. What we're used to seeing. There's a couple of different weird ones, but I don't think they're going to be overpowered. There's this voodoo doll thing, but it's like 12k damage, so it's not the greatest. I think a proc trinket or a non-used trinket is going to be better overall. Remember the bug Battlemaster? Yeah, so like a few passes ago on the 120 PvP test server, the Battlemaster trinket was it was increasing your max health by 350 odd. It was 650, and it had no cooldown, but it didn't stack, so it was just 650 max HP. Great, with 140k usually. They buffed it now. It's like 20 something k now, I think, with a 1.5 minute cooldown, if I remember right. So Battlemaster could be real. $20k is okay, considering you have 140k in pretty good gear. 20k is not bad, I don't think. It's like, it's not as much as a Desperate Prayer, but also it's not going to be affected by MS, right? So it's going to be, I don't know, roughly 20%, something like that. A little bit less, 15%. World boss bis items. I know, dude, it's fucking Dan's game. Like, 2 of my pieces that I was using on this set were like world boss drops, so it feels bad.